I've seen post after post of Christian women almost delighting in this conspiracy that's being put forth by Candace Owens, again, without evidence, by the way. And I'm going to show you some of those tactics in a moment. But these are real people's lives. And so I would just appeal to you, Christian woman. We as Christian women should be seeking truth. We should be seeking Jesus. We should be tending our families. We should be working on the environment of our home and avoiding foolish controversies. Now, again, that doesn't mean we shouldn't be asking questions. That doesn't mean we should believe every narrative, but we should be asking questions that are like, where's the evidence for this? Where's the hard proof of this? If you're going to make a grandiose claim about a person, a very real person who has a life, then you should have evidence to back up those accusations. All right, we're going to get more into it in a second, but I want to go to our first sponsor, which is Foundation Worldview, which this sponsor is just perfect for the topic that we're talking about today, because in our culture, the youngest of our kids are presented with thousands of competing truth claims every week. I think we've shown through social media that we adults can't even process all the different competing truth claims with clarity. We're just somehow unable to use our critical thinking. And that's because we haven't learned it. We have to teach this to our kids. So Foundation Worldview is a great solution to this problem. And frankly, parents, maybe as your child learns, we can all learn as well. Biblical Worldview curriculum really solves this problem. In fact, I learned a lot when I did this curriculum with my son a few years ago. So Biblical Worldview curriculum from Foundation Worldview solves this problem because it's going to lay the foundation for seeking truth in all aspects of life. It's going to teach you and your kids to answer and ask questions like, what is truth? Who is God? How did life begin? What does it mean to be human? How can I actually tell right from wrong? And it's easily implemented in your home church or Christian school. So it's specifically designed for intentional parents, church leaders, and Christian educators who aren't just looking for the fancy curriculum that's going to shorten the kids' attention span and give them what they, their little dopamine levels want to see. But it's really going to teach them what they need to know to go into this world where critical thinking has never been more important. So go to foundationworldview.com today. Use my code Alisa for 10% off of any family, church, or Christian school license. Again, that's foundationworldview.com. Use my code Alisa. Okay, so I want to get into this Candace Owens phenomenon. Really, it's just a phenomenon that's happening in culture. Now, I want to go back a little bit because as many of you may or may not know, Candace had a whole series on Brigitte Macron and how it is her opinion that Brigitte Macron is actually a man. And she did a whole series, very many episodes about this. And back when that was coming out, I just kind of wanted to know, what is this whole Candace Owens phenomenon about? And so I watched every episode of that series. And I remember getting to the end of that. Every episode, she would promise this big reveal in the next episode. And then she would do the next episode, and there was like a little bit of maybe insinuation, but not really anything hardcore proof. Then she would promise more, and it never seemed to come. The big promise just never seemed to get delivered on. And I got to the end of it thinking, well, I haven't seen any hard evidence that Macron is a biological male. What I think I've just observed is someone make a plausible case. Now, I want to explain the difference of that. And I watched also a good bit of her series on Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively and all that. And I had the same conclusion there as well. And from what I'm seeing from her claims about the TPUSA and Charlie Kirk and the murder, it's very much the same playbook. And when I got to the end of the Macron series, I remember thinking, well, I'm not persuaded that Macron is a biological man. It's possible. And if this is a biological man, this is maybe the way it could happen. But that's not evidence. Making a plausible case is not evidence. Using things like insinuation, lots of speculation, looking at different associations and saying, well, she knew this plastic surgeon that specializes in feminizing facial surgery and was at the office at one point. Again, that's not evidence. That is insinuation. That is showing a plausible path. And so I explained this to a friend of mine in a restaurant once. And I think this made a lot of sense because this friend was talking about Candace Owens and how it's kind of hard to parse through some of the claims and to know what is actual evidence versus what's just insinuation. And so this was in Dallas. I was just recently in Dallas, and that was for our Unshaken event. And I'd gone to dinner with a friend when I was in Dallas. Now, I had come to Dallas a couple of days early because I was scheduled to record with Allie Beth for her show. I got to Dallas, and it turns out Allie Beth got sick that day. So I didn't end up recording the episode with Allie. The next day, I went to dinner with my friend, and I said, okay, here's an analogy. Think about it this way. Let's say that in the parking lot of this restaurant that we're sitting in right now, there was a crime committed. Maybe it also happens to coincide at the same time that I get up to go to the bathroom. Okay, now let's look at a plausible case that somebody could make that I committed the crime. They could have maybe camera footage from inside the restaurant of me getting up to go to the bathroom at the right time. The crime happens. And then the person starts to weave together this plausible path. Like, well, hey, Alisa came to Dallas a couple days early. She said she was going to be on Allie Beth's show, but that never panned out. That didn't happen. So that was a lie. Now, notice how I've jumped from saying, oh, you were supposed to do this, you didn't, so you lied. Because you can just say and then keep repeating that. There was a lie. She said she was doing it. She lied. And then she was at this restaurant at the same time. Now, my friend, her eyes were kind of opening like, yeah, I can see how someone could become convinced you did this because of all of these things. And then you could even start saying like, oh, I have these associations. Maybe I met somebody or there's a photo of me with somebody once. And all of this stuff points to me being the person who committed this crime. You could make a plausible path. And if I did commit the crime, maybe this is how it could have happened. But that's not evidence that I committed the crime. There is no evidence that I committed the crime, even though some of these things that are being laid out are true. I came early. I ended up not doing anything that day. Well, what is about that? That's suspicious. I went to the bathroom at the right time. But again, none of that is evidence. So that is one of the tactics that I'm seeing happen throughout this process that, again, is implicating very real people who have very real lives.